Well, everyone, welcome to another very important live stream. Today is Sunday, August 23rd, and we are the day before Donald Trump is announcing his new plan for economic warfare against Iran. We are coming up to the 6-month mark of this conflict, and we have to be honest, the United States is basically at square one. They have not made much progress at all. They have hit a lot of targets in Iran, but the Strait of Hormuz remains under Iranian control. And once again, the United States government is desperate to find a solution that Donald Trump simply doesn't have. We're going to break this all down today, and I'm going to bring in my co-host, Alex from Reporterfy Media, as he introduces our very special guest for today's program.
Well, thanks for that, Cyrus. And it is quite an amazing day here. Sunday here in China, we are at 7:10, and thanks everyone for joining us a little bit earlier today because we have a lot of commitments coming up, especially in preparation for next week's show as well. Anyway, again, on our program here, of course, we welcome one of the greatest voices out of Iran in Tehran, Professor Marandi. Welcome to the program. Sir, you are a voice of reason, a voice that is needed to be amplified throughout the world. We see continued stress come on your country, and we are now also seeing it trickle in and bleed into the financial markets in the United States. We've seen the U.S. Treasury in panic mode, and also, I would say, in an element of trading. What I've seen in 20 years, I've never seen a market that has just lost its guidance, and that is frightening for the average American coming up in the next few weeks. What's going to happen to this financial markets? But let's talk about what's going on the ground there. We're going to pass it over to you, Professor Marandi. Thanks again.
Well, thank you both for inviting me. It's always a great pleasure being on your show. You're absolutely correct. This is the third war, actually, that the United States wages on Iran. In 1980, the United States supported Saddam Hussein in invading the country and gave him all sorts of assistance through its European partners, especially chemical weapons were provided to Iran, and hundreds of billions of dollars were given to Saddam by the Arab regimes in the Persian Gulf that are all effectively U.S. proxies. Then last year, we saw the 12-day war, and now we're in the midst of the third war, which has been going on for, as was rightly pointed out, 6 months now. And the United States wants to start another phase, economic warfare, which is destined to create a global economic crisis. Last night, the new chair of the Supreme National Security Council, Major General Mohsen Rezai, went on Iranian television. I advise your viewers to watch his interview in full. He said basically that if any country engages in economic warfare alongside the United States against Iran, that will effectively be an act of war against the country. And he said that if Iran cannot export oil, no one will export oil, not just through the Strait of Hormuz, but the entire region. In other words, if there are pipelines, those pipelines will become useless. And, since Iran is not in a state of we're not in a ceasefire, we're still at war. All those countries that are assisting the United States and the United States itself are considered as legitimate targets. There is a halt in hostility, but it's not a ceasefire. There's been no agreement. So if, let's say, the Emirates, for example, cooperates with Trump as of tomorrow and tries to strangle the Iranian people, because that's what this economic warfare is all about. It's to bring ordinary people to their knees, to break society, to kill people, to destroy their jobs, to create a lack of medicine and essential needs for individuals, for families. If, for example, the Emirates cooperates with Trump, then that will be seen as a hostile act, an act of war, and thus Iran will retaliate. And he was very clear that that retaliation would be a military retaliation. So we are in a very dangerous place right now. As we speak, roughly 5 million barrels of oil go through the Strait of Hormuz, mostly with Iranian consent. Some go through the northern corridor, and some the Iranians allow to go through the southern corridor in mini deals that they have with countries in the Persian Gulf. Countries don't want to use the northern corridor because they're intimidated by the United States. But if the United States moves to this siege warfare, moving beyond the current siege warfare that it's carrying out, then that will change everything. And so we will have zero oil going through the strait, and we will have zero oil going through the pipelines to Fujairah in the Emirates or to the Red Sea. And it's possible that, for example, if the Republic of Azerbaijan, they prevent Iran and Russia from carrying out their trade and business as usual in cooperation with the United States, then I think it's clear that their oil exports also be blocked. So it's a very dangerous situation. And as you rightly pointed out, the situation with the U.S. bond market, the Japanese currency, and also something that hasn't been talked about much, the enormous damage that has been done to the economies of the countries in the Persian Gulf, countries that have huge amounts of wealth in U.S. stocks and bonds and U.S. banks, and which purchase U.S. weapons. These regimes are in bad shape, and they no longer earn much money because they're completely dependent on oil or gas, and so they're going to start selling bonds and stocks and withdrawing cash from their from banks in the United States. I don't know if the United States will allow that.
Yeah, Professor, you've painted a very realistic picture of what's going on right now, and it certainly is economic chaos. We definitely are forecasting some very difficult roads ahead, and we are on the eve of this big announcement from the United States. I think Secretary Scott Bessent is set to talk tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Again, Donald Trump has said that they're going to launch the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. I mean, what is the feeling in Tehran and amongst the people, when Donald Trump speaks like this? Because I think on one side, we've seen Donald Trump taco out a lot. We've seen him, threaten to strike Iran, to hit civilian targets, to hit infrastructure like bridges and buildings, but yet he does taco out multiple times. Do you feel that this is another opportunity for Donald Trump to taco out? Do you feel that he actually has any leverage in this regard? For example, he's trying to get China to basically buy into his plan, and China, come help us, basically punish Iran. What is the feeling there in Iran, towards this?
Of course, my experiences are all anecdotal, but I think that from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, the mood in Tehran is defiant. The Iranians know that the United States under Trump and under the influence of the Zionist lobby and the Israeli regime want to destroy Iran. They want to break the country into small pieces. They want to turn it into another Syria. After all, that's what Syria was all about. That the reason why they went after Syria was because they didn't want a strong neighbor alongside the Israeli regime. And of course, regional regimes collaborated, created ISIS and Al-Qaeda through the Turkish border. ISIS, their troops went into Syria, and also through the Jordanian border. So the objective from the very beginning was to destroy Syria. And the objective with regards to Iran is also clear as day. So Iranians, on the one hand, they know what they're up against. They know that compromise is not possible with Trump. We've already negotiated with him multiple times, and he has been dishonest every time. Last year, before the 12-day war, we had 5 rounds of negotiations. Then right before the 6th round, the United States launched and the Israeli regime launched that attack and began the war. And it became clear that the whole negotiation process was a facade. It was deception. Then before this war, we had indirect negotiations through Oman, the mediator, which of course recently Trump has twice threatened to destroy the country, an ally of the United States. But in any case, Oman mediated. The foreign minister of Oman said enormous progress had been made. He went to Washington, but it was clear that that was a facade too. And so the war began. And then after 40 days, when the United States failed, because we all remember that on day 1, Trump said unconditional surrender. But after day 40, he had to accept the Iranian 14-point plan for the framework of negotiations. After that, we had a ceasefire. And then Netanyahu carpet bombed Lebanon, and Trump, even though it was a violation of the ceasefire, Trump, as always, he took Netanyahu's side and wrecked the ceasefire. And then we had siege warfare. Then we had the MOU. Trump signed it himself, but he undermined it literally within hours. So with all this experience with Trump, and of course the United States in general, but Trump in particular, the Iranians asked themselves, what's the purpose of negotiating? What promise can the Americans make that we could even imagine that they would be sincere in fulfilling that promise? The only thing that matters for Iran now and Iranians is for the United States to carry out their obligations, for Iran to see those obligations being carried out. At the moment, we don't see that happening at all. So either he tacos, as you put it, or we go to the next phase of enhanced confrontation. But I advise everyone to watch the chair of the Supreme National Security Council's interview last night. He was very tough, and he said that we will be very swift in punishing any entity that cooperates with the United States. And we will also destroy U.S. economic assets in the region. So the military option is very much on the table for the Iranians. And I think that if we do see the United States carry out this policy, that the days and weeks ahead are going to be increasingly difficult for the entire world.
Let me step in here. I have to agree with you, Professor Morandi. Watching these financial markets being window dressed by an administration that has been lying to its civilians for I don't know how long. But let me give you some stark numbers that are factual and true coming from the U.S. official bankruptcy statistics in 2026 here. In the first 6 months, bankruptcies are reaching 310,000, up 12% compared to the first half of 2025. Commercial filings of 17,288 are up another 13%. Chapter 7's 382,161 liquidations, predominantly individuals. If that is not a sick economy, I don't know what is. And something what the general public don't understand is it's not just the Strait of Hormuz here. It's these GCC countries that are connected and pegged against the US dollar. For example, we'll call them the petrodollar recycling, okay? So we have Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and Kuwait. These are all pegged to the US dollars. What happens is once they sell those dollars, they need to put it into something. And that's why you see sometimes they put it into big golf. We got Cyrus on here, big golf competitions each year. You see these countries invested into Formula One, heavy into that. And they are trying to build their economies out with all these dollars. The problem is is when these dollars stop flowing. Just ask Kuwait and Iraq if they're having an issue paying their employees, government employees, over the last few months. And the answer is yes. So as we see this money being pulled back, I think we're going to see the first buck start with the UAE, which has been, I would say, used as a counterparty to sell oil from Iran into the market. They've been enjoying the benefits of that for probably decades, and that may just be, well, what built their banking system there. Now, once that collapses, the local economies start to collapse, the dollar starts to collapse. What do? They got to sell their treasuries. Those get blasted into the market, and all hell breaks loose. And that is the best way I can say to the consumer out there, or the average individual. This is not a conflict that is far away. You may hear it on the kitchen table, watching it on the news and saying, this is thousands of miles away. This isn't going to affect me. It's going to be a slingshot. It's going to come at you real quick, whether it's in oil, whether it's in groceries, whether it's in your mortgage rates will be going higher, or these individuals here that have seen 375,000 bankruptcies. Think of that number, guys. 375,000 in the first 6 months, and we're seeing going into next year, things are not good. Back to you, Cyrus.
Well, absolutely, Alex. I mean, I think we have seen the dominoes start to fall here in the United States economy, and I think that Donald Trump, I just don't really know what his plan is right here. I just don't see him having an exit strategy here, other than actually exiting the Gulf. The United States has to remove itself from there. Professor, I want to get your thoughts on, what is the next phase of the Strait of Hormuz and how Iran plans to continue to control that. Is this something that the Iranians are going to continue to hold indefinitely? Is the Strait of Hormuz effectively now going to be under Iranian control for the foreseeable future and possibly forever?
Well, again, we've discussed this before, and I don't want to bore your viewers, but and we've probably discussed this with others many times, and we've heard it in many places. 6 months ago, the Strait of Hormuz was open, ships were passing through, there was no problem, and no one even knew, or at least many people across the world had never heard of the Strait of Hormuz until Trump and Netanyahu decided to wage war against Iran. The Iranians have said that they want the Strait of Hormuz to be normalized, trade to pass through like it did before. But there will be two differences. One is that the Iranians must have security control over the strait, so that in future countries do not bring in weapon systems and munitions in order to make countries in the Persian Gulf a platform for another war against Iran. So in future, Iran wants to make sure that the capability to bomb Iranian schools, bomb Iranian hospitals, bomb Iranian apartment blocks is no longer possible by potential adversaries through using the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. The second is that Iran will take fees, along with Oman. And of course, the Iranians, from my understanding, will take the majority of the money that comes from the fees. The Iranians believe that the countries in the Persian Gulf that participated in this war and continue to participate in this war, they have an enormous debt to pay to the Iranian people. And the bulk of the ships that pass through the Strait of Hormuz have to do with these countries. So that is something that the Iranians have decided. But they do wish for the ships to be able to pass through easily without being held back. But right now, the United States has imposed a siege on Iran and Iranian ports. And the Iranians are saying as long as the United States continues to impose this siege and does not carry out its obligations in accordance with the MOU that Trump himself signed, the Strait of Hormuz is not going to be normalized. at all. This is just not going to happen. So how long will this continue? I don't know. How will things evolve? I don't know. A lot will depend on tomorrow, because as the chair of the Supreme National Security Council said, Iran will shut down the strait. And as we speak, the Iranians allow for, I think, roughly 5 million barrels a day to pass through, and a couple of million barrels go through the Red Sea. The shortage is enormous, and it is growing by the day. And remember, and I'm sure you do, but the focus in the West has been on the crude oil that gets through the Strait of Hormuz. But there are other shortages that are growing very swiftly, like the shortage of helium, sulfur, fertilizers, aluminum, and other products, petrochemicals and refined products that are produced in the Persian Gulf. And as these accumulate, we're going to see long-term consequences. LNG, of course, a major problem nowadays. So the problems are growing as we speak, especially since the Saudi regime bombed the international airport in Sana'a, Yemen, and started off this conflict between the two sides, which has also decreased Saudi oil exports and made it more expensive and difficult. When you put these together, things are getting worse by the day. And now, with the enhanced embargo that the United States wants to impose on Iran, and the reaction that the Iranians have promised, I think the situation is going to get far worse, far more rapidly.
Well, Cyrus, I'm going to add to this here, and I've been ringing alarm bells for months here about this situation. We still don't get a real grasp on how this filters through to the average person, the average business. But one thing that can be said for certain is, if this U.S. administration goes through with its promises next week and don't taco out, I am about to unleash some information to the market on what really happens to an oil market that absolutely collapses. Now, let me give you guys an idea. If oil gets to $100 to $120 a barrel, we will see anywhere from a 15 to 25% price increase on groceries, not just at the pump. If oil gets around $150 a barrel, then we're in panic mode here. We're starting to see more airline cancellations like we did earlier this year, Cyrus. We broke that news quite early to our viewers, that airlines were scaling back destinations. If we get to about the $175 to $200 mark, simply countries will not be able to feed their people. And that is a reality. Now, how fast can we go there? Real fast. The numbers that you're seeing on the financial markets when you turn on CNBC, these are all paper trades. These are not actually landed barrels or cargo ships, VLCCs full of oil at the destinations to then need to be refined. That's why there's such panic here. There's talk about pipelines reopening up between Canada and the US. What a great strategy. Piss off one of your largest trading partners, Canada, when you're about to get a massive oil shock in the market. And well, that is, this to me is really, I think we are seeing a change of attitude. You know, I'm Canadian, and for my viewers out there, I have to tell you, this is the first time I've actually seen our Prime Minister say, you know what? You guys lie and you guys don't negotiate in true faith. And you know what? We're walking away from the deal. Yeah, we're going to walk away from the deal. And what are you going to do about it? You're going to, what, tariff us again? And I think that we have seen a reaching point here where people, nations, government nations are tired of being bullied, tired of being bankrupt, and tired of being bombed by United States of America. Cyrus, you're the ambassador of peace. How are we going to work through this?
Well, I have a question for Professor here, and it relates to the Canada angle that you just brought up. You know, essentially, the United States has told Canada, you know, we don't want you trading with China. We don't want you getting closer to China. And that obviously is a sovereign decision for Canada to make, right? They're a sovereign nation that can trade with whoever they want to. Alex, you and I were in Chongqing together, and we heard the plans from the Canadian government of importing Chinese EVs starting next year. We know that Chinese EVs are coming to the Canadian market, and that's totally okay for Canada to do. My question for Professor Morandi, I think China is a very important trading partner for Iran. It is a primary destination for a lot of the crude oil exports. It obviously remains, a very big partner. How is China really playing into the future of Iran? We've seen China come out and say, look, we're not going to join you in your economic warfare plan against Iran that you're launching on Monday. Obviously, you don't have the authority to tell us who we can trade with. So can you let our viewers know a little bit more about Iran and China's relationship and what that means for the future?
The Iranian-Chinese relationship has evolved a great deal over the years. And I think that in Iran, the debate over which way Iran should move has been decided as a result of this war. For years, there has been a debate among elites whether Iran should tilt to the east or should it wait to see if the West is going to behave more reasonably. And of course, by the West, it's mainly the United States. The rest are obedient to the United States. Although the events between the United States and Canada, I think, are very, very interesting. The Canadian Prime Minister said that the American signatures they use pencils for their signatures. Well, this is something that we've been experiencing here in Iran for many, many decades. And in fact, Trump signed the MOU, but apparently he too, with the MOU, was using a pencil. So this debate was ongoing. I, of course, as you can imagine, supported Iran tilting towards the global majority and the global South and BRICS nations and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But I had many colleagues who felt that we should be cautious and we shouldn't burn our bridges with the West, despite what they had done to us over the decades. I can say with a great deal of confidence that debate is over. And even my liberal colleagues and friends, and from what I hear through other anecdotal experiences, other liberals across the spectrum and across the country, their positions have changed, and many have become completely disillusioned with the collective West. And so those people who, and they're not a majority, they're always a minority in Iran, but the liberal elites in every country, they have a certain degree of influence and power. They exist in China, they exist in Russia, and they exist in Iran as well. They usually get their ideas from the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, probably not Fox News, but in any case, that's more or less where they get their information, and their worldview is developed as a result. This war has demolished that. This war has changed everything in Iran. So Iran has made a decision to tilt away from the West and to develop ties with countries like China, like Russia, and other countries in BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization to build them to the maximum. And I think that you see the same mentality in Moscow, and you see the same mentality in Beijing. Beijing, of course, is, and you know China better than I, but Beijing is cautious, and Beijing is slow. It moves around like a super tanker, but when it does change, that change becomes permanent. And we've seen over the past few years China's foreign policy evolving, partially thanks to the United States. The United States has antagonized China increasingly over recent years in particular. The same, of course, is true with Russia and Iran. And that has created a convergence among these three countries. And of course, that impacts countries in Central Asia that lie between these three countries. So Trump is, I think, or let's say US elites are their own worst enemies in that they isolate themselves and they push countries closer to each other that, at least in recent history, never had close ties. China in the past, of course, Iran and China had very strong ties. The Silk Road is something that people know of, but that was in the ancient world. But in the last century or so, Iran-China ties were not extensive, especially economic ties. And Iran-Russian ties were always fraught with major tensions. But that has changed. The relationship between Iran and Russia today is very different from just 4 or 5 years ago. And the same is true with China. So, and the cooperation between these parties have increased over the years. And of course, Iran and China, the relationship has evolved over the years. Some things, of course, I wouldn't know because it would definitely be secret. But the cooperation is much more extensive and broad than it was 3-4 years ago.
I think we're seeing a new trade as well. I mean, if we look back at the start of the conflict in Russia, of course, I date it back to 2014 when that conflict originally started, but most of the mainstream media picked that story up in 2022. We did start to see, the world against Russia. Let's use the sanction escalator. And the Europeans blowing up pipelines, sabotaging of you name it. And Russia's had to rebuild its entire banking system. It's people have had to suffer through that, endure that, and they're not going to go through that again. Now, what emerged from all of that was a positive trading partner, a partner that says, you know what, we got your back. We'll put political issues aside, and we'll even put currency issues and banking issues aside. What do you guys need to survive? Well, we're not going to let a nation, and China says we're not going to let a nation of 130 to 140 million people go dark. We'll stand behind and give them what they need, whether it's support in whatever sectors, mining sectors, petroleum sectors, oil and gas, fertilizer, potash. Pretty much Russia is long what the world needs, especially when it comes to China. So China will say, okay, right, we'll buy oil, we'll buy trees, we'll buy rare earth, whatever we can from you until we get this whole banking system sorted out. We got your back. Well, what we're seeing here today or tomorrow is the US government rallying its bullies together and saying, can we squeeze these guys? Can we squeeze the Iranian entire country out of the banking system? Well, here's some good news. I don't think so, because they have tried it since the 80s. The Iranians have been pretty much kicked off the SWIFT. Who would trust that anyway in today's day? I mean, if you have millions and millions of dollars, you definitely don't want it with the SWIFT tag behind it. And no wonder some of these alternative currency markets are gaining steam until the Americans go in and regulate them the way they want it. But moving forward, this is where China comes in again, where China is going to say, all right, Iran, we're going to be there. We know it's going to be tough. This isn't going to be easy, but we'll be there to back you. And again, this is another relationship that China wins by just sitting back, being mature, as you say, being that large, going at tanker speed, which is the speed of a bike daily, and allowing this relationship to mature. I've seen it. I've been here in China in the last 6 years, and I've seen the massive influx of Russian business. I go to the Canton Fair twice a year. I stopped hearing the English language at the Canton Fair about 18 months ago. Now it's people from the Middle East, it's people from Russia, from Belarus, all the stands, they're all there. And I asked these people that are running, this is, one of the largest world consumer electronics shows that is twice a year in Guangzhou. Who's buying? They said, well, we're not trading with North America. And they did want to continue that relationship, but we were talking at a time where Trump took shots at China and said, let's escalate it to 50, to 100, to 150. And after a while, when you hear the boy that's cried wolf so many times, you just got to start laughing and say, this guy is in an alternative reality. And there is some truth to that. I think we have a commander-in-chief that is, I question his health at this time. Cyrus.
There's no doubt about that, Alex. I think all of us are on the same page and witnessing Donald Trump's cognitive decline, his inability to lead right now. But Professor, while we have you on the show, I want to get to this economic warfare, and because I want you to kind of bring some truth to this situation. In the United States, we hear the Iranian economy has been decimated, the currency is destroyed. We've bombed, the living daylights out of Iran. There's no hope left for the people. I think that you've as you've mentioned before many times on our show, is there's this energy from the Iranian people of one of survival and one of basically defiance, because that's what you have to do. How much more can Iran go through economically? I mean, I definitely think that there are some huge economic problems in the local economy there with the currency. What are some things that are going to happen in the future that will allow Iran to sustain this fight for the long term and eventually, win this conflict and get the ultimate goal, which I think would be the United States to leave the region?
Well, a number of things are already happening, although their long-term impact will probably be bear fruit after the war. But I think that there are some they have short-term effects as well, and that is the expansion of Iran's links through Asia itself. Iran's corridors to Central Asia, to China, to the subcontinent are growing, and both in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. The corridor through Afghanistan, some may be surprised, but that is being developed with a sense of urgency because the country needs it. The corridor from Turkmenistan is being broadened, and more trade between Iran and China is now going through Central Asia rather than the Persian Gulf. That is a change. And of course, the north-south transport corridor between Iran and Russia is being developed and is being extensively used, even though it's not fully developed yet, because the two countries need each other a lot. Iran has helped Russia over the past few years, as we all know, and Russia is helping Iran, as we know as well. China knows that if Russia or Iran are harmed, if they are weakened, then they are next. The United States is ruthless when it sees weakness. And so China is keen on helping Russia, as was rightly pointed out, and the same is true with Iran. Of course, at the end of the day, it's the Iranians themselves that have to stand up for their own interests, and they will do that. The Iranians were, the United States expected Iran to fall during the 12-day war, at the beginning of this war, during siege warfare. It all failed. And now they think that they can strangle the Iranian people. And I've seen U.S. senators on Sunday shows gloating about how Iranians are hungry and there's no food, as if that's some sort of achievement. These are crimes against humanity. But of course, it's not true. I mean, in Iran, no one is starving, and no one will starve. But the Iranians know that they have no option but to resist, because the United States is not a country that you can deal with reason. It's not a country that it's not the political elite in the United States is ruthless. And I said this once on your show, and I'm sure some of your viewers have heard it from me elsewhere. There were people in the United States who predicted this. The book I once introduced on your show, Going to Tehran, by Flint and Hillary Leverett, two White House officials, they said that if they dealt with many of the myths about Iran in the West, in the United States, that you often hear, and then they explained that if the United States and Iran don't move towards rapprochement, then there will be conflict, and they turned out to be right. And these two people, this husband and wife, one Jewish, one Catholic, were demonized, despite the fact that they had worked in the White House, despite the fact that they were academics, despite the fact that they went to top universities in the United States. They were demonized and marginalized simply because they were saying Iran is not this evil entity that you claim it is, and this road to confrontation is going to lead us to crisis. So the problem is that the United States is incapable of, and I mean the political elite, is incapable of seeing Iran objectively. And they believe their narratives that they've been repeating for 40 some years, and that Iran is falling apart, that Iran is weak, that Iran is corrupt, that it is imploding, that the regime, as they like to call it, is highly unpopular. They believe these narratives, and those who they hire at think tanks, at universities, elite universities that get funding, special funding. The people who are hired have to speak that language. They have to repeat those narratives. Otherwise, they won't be hired. They'll be rejected. So this narrative has been growing more and more powerful through the decades. And of course, Washington does live in a bubble anyway. But this bubble, within that bubble, there's this dominant narrative that pushes them towards policies that ultimately fail. And when they fail, the narrative is so powerful, this fake narrative, that they do not question the narrative. They think if they go and pound their head against the wall again, next time the wall will break. They don't come to the conclusion that their policy towards Iran is based on false information. And of course, there's a vested interest, the Zionist regime, the Israeli lobby. They strengthen these narratives. We know from the resignation letter of Joe Kent, Trump appointee, the head of counterterrorism, that this war was caused because of the Zionist lobby and the Israeli regime, and that Iran was not a threat to the United States, and that Iran was not developing a nuclear weapon. But of course, these things are not important. When the Israelis need it, when the Zionist lobby needs it, the United States pursues these policies. And now the United States is wrecking its own economy, the global economy, for the sake of Netanyahu and the Israeli regime.
Yeah, I'd like to step in here, if that's okay, Cyrus, just to end it off about this topic. And thanks again. We are looking at the reserves that the Americans have had here. It's been dwindled down over the last 3 to 4 months, and we're talking about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now, we're hearing if things continue at the pace they are now, not even talking about what could happen tomorrow or in the next few weeks, but we're hearing about 67 days, and that will be it. The countdown timer of 293 barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve will end. Now, people who say, well, okay, my gas has gone up a couple dollars at the pump, groceries increased a little. Once that is out, it's out. And it's every man in every country for themselves. Now, who do you want to be? You want to be living in a country that imports oil? Now, you might say, well, the Trump administration has told us that we are net exporters. Well, net exporters of what necessarily break down? Shale gas, shale oil, that is really dirty, murky oil that needs to be sent to some refineries outside of the country. Our Canadian partners can assist in that until you've blown up a deal last night. So in the long run here, Professor, really, I think Iran is willing to, of course, endure such pain. We've seen it happen. These people are resilient. Are they also looking at this countdown of, all right, we got about 60 days until the Americans are really in trouble. They can bomb the hell out of us, but 60 days left in this Strategic Petroleum Reserve. is a big number of importance for people to really focus in on.
Yes, and I think that they are also keeping an eye on the midterm elections, I think on November the 3rd, and elections in the Israeli regime on October the 27th. I'm not sure about these 2 dates, but that's roughly, I think, correct. So yes, and if I was an Iranian senior official, I would be using this time to put pressure on Trump. And I assume that's what they're doing. I mean, last night in that interview, which I alluded to a couple of times already, the chair of the Supreme National Security Council began his interview with discussing the economic situation in the United States. And he is an economist, by the way. He has a PhD in economics. So that is a field that he would by nature be interested in. So I'm pretty sure that the Iranians are looking to the midterm elections. Not that the Democrats have shown themselves to be humane and anti-war. They've supported all the wars that the Republicans have supported. But the reality is that the people of the United States have turned against war. And they've turned against many things, including the Israeli regime. And that shift's been more dramatic and more rapid among supporters of let's say supporters of the Democratic Party and independents. Less so among Republicans, but it's happening there too. So this war, which is viewed very unfavorably by Americans, and Americans recognize that Trump and Netanyahu are behind it, will be looked upon by the American public during the midterm, alongside the ongoing genocide in Gaza, and of course the atrocities in Lebanon, and the threats to war now in Syria and Turkey, and apparently the Israeli regime wants to have war with everyone. But in any case, the Iranians are probably waiting to see if Trump is hit hard during the midterms, because that could force him to shift some of his priorities.
Right. Well, interesting enough, here in the U.S., prediction markets have now flipped and said that the Democrats now are favored to win both the House and the Senate here. Obviously, we're still a few months out from there, but I agree with your sentiment there, Professor, in the sense that there's a big change, I think, coming, especially in the youth, and very similar to how the youth in Iran have changed. I think as you had mentioned before on our stream, possibly before this war, a lot of youth were influenced by the West. They had these ideas, but this has certainly galvanized all of Iranian society and to really expose, who the United States government is, who they're ultimately working for, which of course is Israel. The United States has been very open about the fact that we are serving Israeli interests and putting them above our own and the world's interests, for that matter. I did want to add one more thing. It's always remarkable to chat with you because I see the same faults that we constantly make with China that we're making with Iran and Russia. And and like you said, these two U.S. diplomats that went to Tehran, they wrote a book. They actually said, look, here's what we've experienced in our real life. This is what's going to happen. This is what we think. And they are demonized in the United States. And that is exactly the policies that we have made consistently over the years. There was a really interesting gentleman by the name of John Service, who was actually a missionary born in Chongqing, China. He actually grew up in China, spoke perfect Chinese, actually met with Mao Zedong. And actually, this was Chairman Mao. He actually said, we'd like to actually build a relationship with America. Like, China's poor. We actually need America. John Service came back and said that to America, and they said, no, you've been hanging out with Mao. You're a communist. They put him in jail. Put him in jail for many years, and they refused to listen to his testimony, even though he served as a U.S. diplomat. And then, of course, we know what happened with the United States completely mismanaging, the China relationship for many, many decades. But again, it's this consistent pattern of foreign policy failure from the United States. I wish it could change. I mean, we're making the same mistakes in 2026 as we were in 1936, which is remarkable. So I just wanted to bring that comparison up for our viewers out there. And Unfortunately, I've come to the end of my time here. I've got to go to another appointment, but I don't know how much time you have, Professor. I just want to always say it's such a pleasure to be with you and to share your insights and have you on Let's Talk Geopolitics. I'm going to pass it over to Alex. Alex is going to continue the show. Alex, over to you.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody. You can keep watching on my channel, but thank you, everybody, for your amazing time today. And thank you, Professor. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you very much for having me. And I'll tell a story about the coup in 1953 that your story reminded me of that story, which later on, if you have time, it may be interesting for you to listen to it. But thank you very much for having me.
So we'll let Cyrus go. And
so
Cyrus, once again, thank you very much. And for his audience, stay tuned. We have some China stuff coming up after our last segment here with Professor Morandi, who has joined us from Tehran. Now that I've got you one-on-one, I really want to get down to the crux of this here. I see an administration that is on a roller coaster into hell. I watch these financial markets. I consistently traded them for 20 some years now. I'm involved in the derivatives market. I have saw so much monkey business going on here that I'm terrified as what's going to happen here over the next, let's say, 90 to 120 days. We are messing with fire here in the financial markets when it comes to especially oil. The public is now starting to wake up, but by the time the public gets that information, it's already hit their bottom line or it's hurt them in some way. We don't know even how many casualties Trump's little experiment with tariffs did on the average person running a business in the United States. We saw stories of people being interviewed saying, well, if these tariffs come in, my business is gone. And they probably have. It's probably one of those 375,000 people that I stated earlier on in the show. But I'm going to continue to bang the drums on this here. What are we in for? If this does not find a solution, how bad will it get for the rest of the world when Iran says, you know what, we're enduring pain and it's now time for the rest of the global economy to endure it? I know I keep banging on about this, but what are we in for?
If things continue to go down, if we continue to go down this road, I think there are three paths that can, in general, that can be taken, or four, let's say. One is the United States walks away, and there won't be normalization, obviously, but it will decrease tensions, because until the genocide in Gaza comes to an end and the occupation of Lebanon is over, Iran says it's not going to normalize the Strait of Hormuz. But if Trump just walks away and says, I won and I don't need the Strait of Hormuz, and you know what he said, the sort of nonsense that he says all the time. If he just says, I was victorious, I destroyed Iran, they have no army, they have no air force, they have no navy, they have no nuclear program, they're a broken people, I brought them to their knees, they're hungry, I'm walking away, I've done what I need to do. If he does that, the situation will continue to get worse. But it will be very different from the other three options. The second option is the status quo, what we have right now. This is the slow road to hell, because the global situation will continue to get worse, and it will be a slow, like death by 1,000 cuts. Very slow. Things will go downhill. The global economy, at some point, you're going to see the crisis in the bond market evolve and become evident for all to see. And I think you're going to see a major crash at some point. The last two scenarios are the worst ones. One is this siege warfare, which they want to begin tomorrow. If that happens and the Iranians carry out what they said they will do, that will swiftly take us downhill, and the shortages will grow much greater. The shortages will grow much faster than even now with the current trend. I think that we will see a crash quite soon, and I think that will a global economic depression would be inevitable unless Trump quickly, after a few days, like Liberation Day with China, where he backed off very swiftly. Unless he does that, I think that we are destined for global economic depression. The fourth route is war. And the United States has not removed any of its assets from the region. In fact, it has increased its military assets. The Iranians, time is on the Iranian side though, because Iran's production of missiles and drones is very rapid, whereas it's for the United States it's very slow. We all know this because we've heard what the problems are with the United States. But if they do go to war, and it will definitely be under pressure from Netanyahu and the Israeli regime, who will demand war or escalation, because this siege warfare that's being planned for tomorrow, Netanyahu demanded this. The Iranian chair of the Supreme National Security Council said last night that Netanyahu pushed Trump to pursue this policy. But in any case, if war restarts and the United States starts targeting Iran's critical infrastructure, then Iran will destroy the oil and gas facilities and the infrastructure of the countries in the region. And that will lead to an immediate crash because no one can manipulate the market anymore. When people see scenes of oil and gas facilities in flames, then they know it's all over. So none of the four scenarios, and of course these are just four general ideas, but none of these four scenarios are good. But the last two are very bad, assuming that the policy that is going to be pursued tomorrow continues for weeks. And the first two, the first one is the worst, the best case scenario, but I don't see that as being very likely for now. But let me just add one thing here, and that was in response to the previous discussion. When the United States carried out, because nowadays you hear like Pompeo and others saying that the Iranians started this war against the United States 47 years ago, which is the talk of a madman. But the problem really began in 1953 with the U.S. coup in Iran. But I don't know how many of your viewers know this. The Iranians and the British were in conflict because the Iranians wanted to nationalize their oil because the British were ripping off the Iranian people. The Iranian people were poor, and the British were taking all the wealth. So Iran wanted to nationalize the oil, but the elites in Iran, they viewed the United States differently than the British, including the Prime Minister, Dr. Mossadegh. They trusted the United States. They thought, not all elites, of course, but many, they thought that the United States was a country that had revolted against the empire, that had established its own country, that had decolonized itself, and so that it would have sympathy for the Iranian people. They would understand the Iranian perspective. And so they were naive about the United States. Obviously, Howard Zinn's A People's History hadn't been written back then for them to read, but his book, A People's History of the United States. But that was one reason why the coup was so successful, because the Iranians were naive about the United States. And today, though, we're seeing that even in the West, people are no longer naive about the United States. Canada, as you pointed out, if I watched the Canadian Prime Minister just a couple of hours ago. Actually, I watched on YouTube. If he had spoken in Persian, I would have thought that this was an Iranian official. The language that he used to describe the U.S. government was something that would resonate in Tehran. So when even Canada, which is, I can't say it's the closest ally, because the only ally of the United States is Israel, apparently. Well, not an ally, but its overlord. But you would imagine that the country that is closest to the United States would be Canada, because you can't really tell the difference between the two. The accent is almost the same. It is the same in many places. They travel back and forth. And then for the United States to treat Canada like this, then imagine how it is for the rest of the world. And I think this is another sign of the empire collapsing.
I have to agree with you. And I want to add to that. Also, in some of the notes of trade, they asked for us to, the Americans asked for the Canadians to remove one of our national languages, which is French. They wanted it removed from the document and basically said, listen, we don't want to make labels or put dual labels. In Canada, it's very easy to see maybe a box of cereal or instruction manuals to be in French and English. And surprisingly enough here, the Americans feel that no, they should be able to sell their elite product into our country and don't want to abide by our local regulations, especially when it comes to a language that is, we have a dual language society.
Your identity.
Yeah, it's our identity.
Yes, so exactly. And that is the problem, that they cannot even tolerate the identity of different countries that are different from that of the United States. They have been demonizing Iran for a long time over identity issues. They have been demonizing the Russians and others, but now, I mean, how close can the shared border is enormous. The crossing that border is extraordinarily easy. If they cannot tolerate the cultural differences that exist in Canada, then imagine how they treat the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful language coming out of that administration, and it's the first time I've seen as a Canadian a prime minister that has said, "Okay, you know what, guys, it's a bad deal." And then our premiers of provinces, who are a little bit more softer spoken, they hit the microphones this morning and said, what is strange is America really put the emphasis on getting their alcohol back on our shelves. They made that a very bold statement in negotiations that we want our alcohol back on the shelves. And one of our premiers said, you can put it on the shelves, but I encourage Canadians not to take it off the shelves and buy it. But yeah, I mean, we're a small country. We're probably 1/10 of the population of the United States. But again, we don't want to be bullied. We don't want to be bankrupt. And especially, we don't want to be bombed or be the 51st state of America. They say that jokingly, but seriously, somebody in maybe the war room of Pete Hegseth that said, yeah, we could probably take Canada in 6 days. We joke about it, but we've seen examples about it all over the globe. We saw it in Venezuela in the middle of the night, taking out a leader of a sovereign country and arresting him on gun charges in New York, the District of New York. I mean, just bizarre things happening. They've got their eyes on Cuba, but I think they picked the fight with the wrong country this time. And the Iranians are getting the support from, of course, our channels here and a lot of other channels that continue to have you on. Cyrus and I had a conversation last week. Is there something that we can do? I mean, you come on these shows, you dedicate so much of your time. Is there a Substack or a certain type of platform that we can promote? I mean, we get endless amount of emails. How can we support and help Professor Morandi? He's always helping out, giving us the voice of reason on the land. Is there something that we can do to show our support and solidarity for you?
Well, you're very kind, and so are your viewers. As you know, I only have my Twitter account. My Instagram and my Facebook account have been deleted a long time ago. So this is what's left. I have a Telegram channel, but I usually I put my interviews there, like this one, which I'll add to it shortly. There really isn't much that I don't have a Substack. My my job is actually something different. I teach English literature and Orientalism at the university, but this has become I've become an activist of sort. I'm not an expert, but I've been sort of uh, moving back and forth from what I'm supposed to be doing and what I'm paid to do to this sort of activism. But the books that I mentioned last time, I would advise, and the reason why I advise those is because it's easier for people. I mean, many of your viewers are very open-minded, most of them, if not all of them. But people across the world, in the West, if a book is written by someone who was in the White House or someone who is in Western government, it's easier for them to accept the arguments uh, because they're more familiar with them and so on. But I think that Going to Tehran is a very good book for people to read. I would stress that people read that because now, it's like the 1960s where the war in Vietnam initially was sold to the American people as something. And then it gradually, the circumstances were different, of course, but gradually when the more and more soldiers were sent to Vietnam and the body bags began to come back to the United States, young people began to read more about Vietnam, and they discovered that they were lied to, about Vietnam. And I think that for 47 years now, the American people and people across the West have been lied to about Iran. In fact, people across our region have been lied to by these oil and gas rich regimes that are bound to the United States. So I think if people read, if they follow your work, that's uh, I think that's more than enough. If they read these books as well, that's excellent. But I have a Twitter account and a Telegram channel.
Well, we'll do whatever we can to support you, whether that's coming over to spend a few weeks and visiting you, vice versa. If we can get you over here to China and spend some time with us, we're going to do everything we can to pull the stops out for that. Professor Morandi, I want to thank you once again for sharing on the ground, real time situations to our audience. I know this week is going to be a very difficult week for all the citizens of your country and in that region. I hope that we can persevere and get through this. We're all in it together. I really, truly, honestly feel that.
Absolutely.
And we may have you on sooner rather than later. We will keep in touch with you because this is
My
going to be
pleasure.
a very, very fluid week. I'll let you get on with things there. Please have a lovely day in Tehran. And from all of us here at Let's Talk Geopolitics, we thank you again for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. And I thank your audience for listening. And hopefully the next time we speak, there will be better news.
Let's hope so. Take care, sir. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Well, everyone, Cyrus Jansen's audience is still here. We're going to shift, and that was a great segment there with Professor Morandi. It was one of the first times I've actually had him one-on-one on the show here, and I have to tell you, interviewing a person that is so well informed in the region. Now, we're going to turn our tables here to China. There is some news here in this latest segment here in this live stream. I think it's important. We got a large audience here that focuses a lot on China. Right now, I just want to go over a couple of news stories. And up and coming, we have a 15-year-old. So his name is Declan Dumbrill. You probably heard that last name somewhere before. And he's doing some pretty extraordinary stuff. We're going to talk about that in a few moments. He's sitting backstage, but I just want to go over a couple of things that are happening right now here in China. Currently, right now, we have China's record-breaking arch bridge. China's Fenglai Daxi River Bridge has set, get this again, a world record with a 580-meter steel arch span. Engineers overcame weak foundations, extremely assembly precision, and high-altitude construction challenges using lightweight foundations, digital pre-assembly, and real-time digital twin control. And we're seeing that, pretty much carry forward if you follow Chongqing, Southwest China here. we also have a rail link that is going to be reducing the time here in our region to get to large cities like Kunming in just over a few hours. Again, as China continues to invest in its rail network, I guesstimate somewhere over 60,000 square kilometers of rail link. Let's go on to another story here. This is quite interesting. This is a little bit closer to my heart here. The Quebec language dispute halts talks, and I don't blame our Prime Minister of Canada. Canada halted U.S. trade talks after Washington sought concessions on Quebec's French language and cultural protections. New 50% tariffs now hit billions in Canadian exports. Quebec warns of severe business losses, while Ottawa plans matching tariffs and financial relief for the affected companies. Okay, well, let's welcome onto the show here. His name is Declan Dumbrell, and he's doing some pretty remarkable stuff here. Let's get this character on the line, and guys, be easy on him. Declan, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you? How are you?
Oh, you're in the seat of Daniel Dumbrell now. Big seat.
I am, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself
Very big
and
seat.
what on. I don't know if you can see the screen like I see the screen here, but something's off to
I can,
the
yeah.
left side here. Tell us what's going on here. Your dad was telling me the story about you yesterday, and I said, "Wow, we got to get this guy on the show." So tell us what's going on.
Okay, well, first, thank you, Alex, for having me on the show. And basically what we did was a few teachers from my school and we realized that we've been launching so many satellites into space recently, and we have around 800,000 terabytes of satellite data that we have from planets, from nebulas, from places like that in space, and 95% of that we haven't analyzed yet. So we
Okay.
decided that we could develop a sort of system to analyze this because it's way too much for humans to analyze, right?
Okay,
800,000 terabytes, who can analyze that?
Declan, let me slow you down here. This is
All
quite
right, all right.
remarkable. Okay, you're 15, right? And
Yeah,
you
I'm
guys
15.
decided to wake up one morning and throw this in, throw this into a like a AI. Tell me how did you guys get this idea?
So, well, first of all, AI is a lot better than humans analyzing large data sets, right? And so we've been looking at the scientific community, and there's so many things that AI can achieve that humans can't.
Mhm.
So yeah, we kind of woke up one morning and realized we could conduct some sort of research on this and compare how much better AI is than humans at conducting this research and analyzing this data.
So what data did you guys said you want to let's scan Mars? Is that what you decided to do?
Well,
I mean, this is
basically, yeah,
extraordinary.
basically.
So you guys
So,
scanned Mars. You put all
we
this
looked
stuff
at
into the AI.
So yeah, we actually trained our own AI model, and then it's a two-step AI. So
Okay.
first we use our own trained AI, right, which scans and detects where the craters are, and then we give this data to a LLM AI, which is Claude. We give to Claude, and then it told us a bunch of information about how old it is and all this analysis about the craters. So we have now a comprehensive analysis of everything we need to know about the surface of Mars. And we estimate that we can complete the analysis of the entire planet within around 2 weeks. And this is compared to humans who took around 3 years to analyze the entire surface. So this is pretty amazing for AI to work at this scale compared to previous human analysis.
I think that is quite amazing. We're looking at a photo here. What was that photo that we just bring up here on the screen? Who's that in this photo? Tell us about it.
So the person to my right is actually a professor of astrophysics at Hong Kong University, and he was attending that conference in Japan, in Fukuoka, the AOGS annual conference. And the person to my left is actually the chairman of the event. He was the person organizing it all. And I was explaining my research to them, and they thought it was pretty interesting, and so we took a picture together.
I mean, again, how does young minds come up with this kind of things? You know, Is it because of, you're in China here in I believe Chongqing.
I am, yeah.
And I'm a friend of your father's, Daniel Dumbrill. I think our audience knows him very well. He's shared screens with me on many occasions. But the average youth, maybe in North America, might not have this type of access. Is this a China-driven thing where in the school systems that they are embracing AI, not to write your school reports for you, but to open your minds up and discover new things? Is this, do you feel this might be a China thing, or I don't know, share us your insights on that?
Well, from my experience, it very much is. Our school is encouraging us to use AI in the aspect of research and critical thinking, less of writing essays. But I think our school and many other schools actually are encouraging us to utilize the new and upcoming technologies that the world has given us, instead of just closing them off. This is amazing technology that we have, and instead of just saying no, you can't use it at all, we can use it in particular areas which can allow us to produce work like this.
Yeah, I'm looking on the screen here. So what are we looking at? Is this your report?
Well, this is in the middle is actually my research poster.
Wow.
There's a picture of the crater. Yeah, it took us 4 months to get this result. And there's some data from the AI training. You see the graphs in the middle. And to the right is the results of the code running. So the results of the crater analysis.
Declan, I got another question because they're coming in fast and furious here in our comment box. You've definitely got the attention probably some parents out there that are going to say, okay, kids, put the phones away for the night. We got a 15-year-old guy here in China that is scanning the surface of Mars. We better wake up. There's a question here in our comment box that says, so satellites can scan the surface of Mars. What satellite companies? Where are we connecting to get this information?
Well, it's not satellites in orbit of Earth. Mm-hmm. It's actually probes that we sent out to orbit Mars, right? We have probes around many planets in our solar system, and we took data from this database called the CTX Mosaic, mm-hmm. which is developed by Caltech. So they have this entire catalog of images from Mars, optical images from their probe that they have orbiting Mars. And we took that, then we ran it through our pipeline, which with our 2 AI systems, with our parameters adjusted, and it gave us all this data.
Incredible. And you've been recognized for your work here. Has the school recognized, or has there been some contests that you can enter? How are you getting recognition for this fine work, young man?
Well, my school has already interviewed me last week. I presented this at my school as well, like on stage. And well, of course, my school will be offering science competitions and science opportunities for everyone. So this is just going to boost me more, get my recommendation out there, boost my profile.
That's extraordinary. And future ambitions using this type of technology, how would you really embrace other people your age or even younger to maybe kick part of the social media out and focus in on some really innovative things? What kind of advice would you give to people your age?
Well, the best thing to do is to experiment, right? These resources that we have, they're mostly free online, right? AI, it's massively accessible. There's DeepSeek, there's ChatGPT, Claude, all these sorts of AIs. You can experiment with them as much as you want. They can accomplish so many more things than we imagine, right? They can help you boost your imagination and boost your creativity by magnitudes, by orders of magnitudes. And it's just amazing how you can utilize this technology to actually do what you love. Right, this is exactly what I did. I was experimenting with AI with different models, and instead of scrolling with my phone in bed, and this is what I could accomplish.
Well, I think that you would probably scroll Mars, maybe map it out, and Maybe sell plots on Mars. That would be my angle. When Elon lands
Well,
the
I mean, that's a
spaceship
good
there.
idea. Yeah.
You didn't hear it from me, by the way, but I would like one with a nice view of Earth. Okay. But Declan, is there anything
I'll
else
keep
you'd
it for
like
you. I'll keep it for you.
anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we let you go?
Well, generally, just be curious and explore whatever you want to explore, right? There's so many things in the world you can accomplish. And this is just a small part of my ambitions to benefit the scientific community. And I strongly suggest everyone else to, chase their ambitions as well.
Well, truly, words of wisdom. Thanks again, Declan, for sticking around and being part of our show tonight. We're going to head back to the rest of our program, but once again, everyone, what a pleasure and honor to have you on and sharing that with us. It gives us a true inspiration for the youth of today. Thanks again, Declan.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Bye-bye. We have a couple of more slides on the show. I think Cyrus was going to bring a couple of slides onto the program. I'm going to play them for our audience here. Here we go here. This is a very, very fascinating figure here. Possible insider trading on war markets. Have a look at this, guys. This figure here.
Bonds will continue declining. We've got a
152 wallets
that I don't really understand.
with signs of insider activity. Win rate of over 97% and more than 8 million in profits. Insider bets, Polymarket, truly extraordinary how people are getting away with this. I guess everybody can break the law in the United States now, no problem. Okay, we're going to go on to Scott Bessent and what he has to say, the Treasury Secretary.
I'm confident that bonds will continue declining. We've got a spike in oil prices today that I don't really understand. Our announcement.
A spike in oil prices that he doesn't understand. Okay, enlighten us. Do we have any more clips, or is that it for tonight? That's it, everybody. Once again, I just want to say thank you to our audiences from all over the world. We've noticed over 44 countries come and watch our live stream on a weekly basis, making it one of the largest live streams streamed here from China and the international markets here around the world. Again, thank you to the Cyrus Jansen audience that come in, the iChongqing, and of course the Reporterfy media audience. Again, if you're unaware of our channels, we put out a lot of content each week. Just click the subscribe button, forward it, and share throughout all social media. Once again, thank you to Professor Morandi and Declan Dumbrell and Cyrus Jansen. My name is Alex Reporterfy. It's Sunday night here in China, 8:31. We're going to end the show off. We'll see you guys in the comment section right now as we roll the outro.